So this is something that originally came from a BuzzFeed article that was leaked to them, and I guess the British Ministry of Defense confirmed that this was a legitimate document. So for this video, I'm going to assume it is a real document. But this is something apparently used by the British Army to as like a warning sign sheet for extreme right-wing individuals. And according to the BuzzFeed article, again, it's BuzzFeed, so how accurate is it? According to them, after like 2 years ago, there was this time where Tommy Robinson took a picture with a bunch of soldiers, and since then it was like, oh no, like extreme right-wing figures in our army, and we need to make sure we kick them all out. So yeah, so that's what this is. This is a sheet of like how to identify someone if someone is extreme right wing. Now, something you need to keep in mind is that you can't pick things that are so incredibly like across the spectrum that that they don't narrow it down to the extreme right wing. So again, the first one right here, I'm going to say the problem with it, describes themselves as patriots. Is that something that the extreme right wing does? Yes. It is also something that the moderate right wing does. Yes, it's actually, is it something that even like some centrists, and even like center left-wingers, even like the occasional moderate left-winger, do they refer to themselves as patriots? Sure. Obviously, this is a thing leaning more to the right wing, but all you can really say about describing yourself as a patriot is that you're probably right-wing. Are you extreme right-wing? I mean, considering there's a lot more moderate and centrist right-wingers than extreme right-wingers, because that's how a political spectrum works. This is not a good thing to include on this thing. Because really, like, again, if you say, like, drinks water or breathes air, that is not at all helpful, because there are so many people that fit under that definition that it doesn't narrow anything down. So if you say describes themselves as patriots as a sign of extreme right-wing behavior, I mean, it's kind of an inaccurate statement, because it's kind of like saying you agree with, you think that meritocracy is a good thing. Well, again, that's something that pretty much everyone agrees with if you're not far left. So that's not a very good indicator of extreme right-wing behavior. So you have to pick things that are specific to the extreme right wing. And so we're going to kind of go through this. And again, to point out, like, some of these things I'll say, sure, that's a more extreme right-wing position. That doesn't mean I agree with it. That doesn't mean that I condemn it. That doesn't mean that I think it's good or a bad thing. I'm just pointing out, in terms of a political spectrum, is this an accurate phrase? Is this an accurate thing? So this gives you an idea, honestly, of what the British Army is using to teach people. So again, describe themselves as patriots. We already did that one. That's something that pretty much everyone on the right likes to call themselves. Looks at opponents as traitors. That is something that, according to Jonathan Haidt, is more of a right wing, like more of a conservative idea, that loyalty is much more important among conservatives. Again, at the very least, we can say this is a right wing position, not an extreme right wing position. But the idea of traitors, like, isn't that something that pretty much everyone has a concept of? That, like, betrayal is a bad thing? That is, again, look at Benedict Arnold. Like, we're taught in U.S. history in the U.S. that Benedict Arnold was a traitor because he betrayed the U.S. Is that extreme right wing? No, like, everyone is traitors. That everyone has this concept that if you side with someone and then you suddenly change sides, that you're a traitor. That's pretty much something that everyone has, regardless of the political spectrum. Refer to individuals ready to challenge their extreme right-wing views as being indoctrinated. Again, doesn't everyone do that? We see what the left's saying. Like, if the left says, or if a black person or a minority says, or is conservative, or basically says, I'm not oppressed, the far left, like the more like intersectionality people, will reply with, yeah, you're indoctrinated, you just don't know that you're oppressed. Like, you're so oppressed, you don't even know you're oppressed. That kind of thing. So this is, again, something that doesn't exactly refer or limit themselves to the right wing. This isn't even something that narrows it. This isn't even something that's right wing. It's something that everyone like has a concept of across the political spectrum. So again, this is, we're 0 for 3 right now. Refer to political correctness as some sort of left-wing or communist plot. I mean, they're not entirely wrong there. And again, when I think about it, I'm trying to think of all the people that I hear say this. And if you're not aware, we're going left to right, or left to right, top, bottom. I'm just trying to think of the many people I have heard say something along the lines of that political correctness is some left-wing plot that the alt-right and the far-right despise. So it's like, yeah, again, that doesn't exactly help. All this shows is that you're right-wing. Use blatantly untruthful or incorrect references to immigration, Judaism, or Islam. Again, no bias there, but untruthful or incorrect references to immigrants. Again, being anti-immigrant, is that a sign of right-wing behavior? Yes, and it is a spectrum where the far left says they want open borders. The far left wants open borders. The moderate left wants a more open immigration system, and generally on the right are more anti-immigrant in the sense that they start to come out against illegal immigrants, and they say maybe we should restrict the amount of immigrants coming into our country. And then you have the far right, which is basically close our borders. So if you wanted to make that last panel at the top right accurate, you would basically say like close our borders, or you would say like, yeah, massively restrict immigration to pretty much zero. Again, does that make that position good or bad? I'm not commenting on that. I'm just saying that completely opposing like any immigration to the country at all, like pure isolationism, that tends to be an extreme right-wing position. And then especially Judaism or Islam, again, like Islam. Well, Islam is something that pretty much as long as you're on the right wing at all, you're against it in some sense. And of course, when they say blatantly untruthful or incorrect references, that's kind of that just seems to be a tactic for the most part to say, again, if I disagree with it, it's untruthful. Judaism, there you go. Like if you start talking about the Jewish question, that is an extreme right position. So that's something that you only like if you're not on the extreme right, you generally don't talk about the Jewish question or anything like that, or any kind of anti-Semitic. That doesn't mean you have to be a Zionist if you're not on the extreme right. It just means if you ever like the phrase "open borders for Israel" is something common among the extreme far right or the extreme right wing. And again, like I'm not even making character judgments on that. Again, even though I think the whole Jewish question thing is dumb and wrong, and I forget what it's called, like confirmation bias. I can't remember, or selection bias. I think I can't remember. Where basically like you start noticing things as you look for them, but you don't actually like notice them all the other times. But yeah, so this is something that this one block right here at the very top right, they almost got like a third correct. so far, I would say we're pretty much 0 for 5 at this point. Add Istand British place names. I mean, that's basically if you're anti-immigration and you have a sense of humor, or anti-mass immigration. Let me correct that. If you're against mass immigration and you have a sense of humor, you will do that. So again, that's something that like moderate right-wingers do, like meme culture people do. It's a joke. It's a joke, but it's not really a joke kind of thing. It's meant in humor, but it's also to point out something serious. But no, this is something, again, not limited to the extreme right. Use the term Islamofascism. I mean, I'll admit I haven't heard that term much, but then again, I like, probably maybe like someone kind of like Robert Spencer probably uses that term. I don't know, and he's not extreme right-wing. So again, I'll have to say that one I can't really attribute too much. That's because I haven't really heard that. I can't think of many people who say that term. Although again, being if you're leading to the greater being anti-Islam thing, as long as you're pretty much center right, you're anti-Islam. Make generalizations about Muslims and Jews. I mean, that is actually kind of, if you say make negative generalizations about Muslims and Jews, maybe I can get on board with that. But again, if you say Islam is bad, that is a generalization, but is that like a collectivist term? Because as you see, the extreme left and the extreme right tend to be more collectivist. But that's such a vague statement. Because again, if I say Islam is bad, which I'll be honest, that's a statement I agree with, is that making a generalization about Muslims? I guess so. And something about if you point out that I mean, Jewish people are overrepresented in positions of power. I mean, I don't think that's the Jewish conspiracy people will say that's because I don't even know why they say it, to be honest. I guess it's because of the high in-group preference, but honestly, they'll say that as a bad thing. I don't really see that as a bad thing at all. And really, it's kind of like saying Jewish people are disproportionately rich. It's like, so that's not an insult. For me, that's a compliment. Honestly, if you're a capitalist, that's a compliment. So I fail to see how, again, they almost maybe have a point there, but again, like that's such a vague statement that it's something that you don't have to be like most people who make generalizations about groups of people are everyone. Not even like your political bias doesn't really have an influence on that. Make inaccurate generalizations about the left or government. Literally everyone does that. Like everyone, even the left does that. Talk of an impending social conflict or race war. I mean, I'm pretty sure Tim Pool maybe I might have this wrong, but I'm pretty sure Tim Pool was even like concerned about something like this, and he's not exactly an extreme right-wing figure, so I'm going to say, yeah, that's dumb. I mean, the far right talks about this more, I think, than the average person, but even then, so we're pretty much 0 for 10 right now, I got to say. We're talking about, I yet to see a single thing that talks, or a single issue that is limited specifically to the extreme right-wing. Like, describe multicultural towns as lost. That's a weird way to phrase it. I mean, I've never actually met anyone that's used the word specifically lost. I mean, again, if you're against multiculturalism, well, isn't Dinesh D'Souza against multiculturalism? Or I mean, he's critical of diversity. I know that much. Which, I mean, they're kind of criticism of diversity and criticism of multiculturalism are pretty much rather similar, in my opinion. So that's something that's more prevalent among the extreme right, but again, something that I can't say is specific to them. Discuss the creation of white-only communities. Finally, we've actually found one thing that's on the extreme alt-right. This is something that, I mean, I think is characteristic of the alt-right, to talk about white-only communities. And of course, then there's the difference of, like, when you talk about the creation of white-only communities, they actually phrase that rather well. Because if you're anti-multiculturalism, if you're anti-diversity, if you're anti-mass immigration, then sure, those are all like rather conservative positions. But when you start going to the point of, yes, I want a white-only community, that is the point that puts you on the frame. That is not something you'll hear a moderate conservative say. That is not something that is a common view among the right. So in that sense, it's like, hey, if you talk about they even say discuss the creation of. So I actually think the rather interesting is if you criticize the creation of white-only communities, that is technically discussing it. So even then, they kind of phrased it wrong. So I'd honestly say the better way to put this is endorses the creation of white-only communities, or some kind of, basically, if you're starting to say, yes, we need a white ethno-state, that's where yes, it would not be, I think it would be fair to say you're on the far right. So what is this? 12. We are 1 for 12 right now. Wow. Claim that immigration is the root of injustices against vulnerable people, i.e. old age, pensioners, veterans. Is the root of injustices. That's such a... It's actually kind of funny because to say root of injustices sounds like something that only a like someone that's on the left would phrase it that way. I've never actually heard any right-wingers phrase it that way. And that's an interesting way of just phrasing it, I think. But yeah, to say that immigration is, immigration hurts, not even immigration hurts, but like mass immigration or unrestricted immigration, hurts vulnerable people. I mean, I guess they're right. It just seems worded so weird that, I don't think that's something that's limited to the far right either. It's just it's worded in a strange way that I don't think I've ever heard anyone actually say that immigration is the root of injustices against vulnerable people. I mean, if you're talking about like people that say, sure, open borders would be bad for unskilled laborers, I mean, that's true. Unskilled laborers, I guess, are vulnerable people. I don't know. It's the weird like left-wing lingo here makes it hard to understand because no one on the right would actually word it that way. Threaten violence when hosting an argument, Threaten violence when losing an argument, although claiming that extreme right-wing groups protest peacefully. I mean, yes, that is actually yes. That one's fair because threaten violence when losing an argument. That is something that basically the two extremes, like both the far right and the far left, both do. But then, although claiming that extreme right-wing groups protest peacefully, so the far left wouldn't say that. So that one you're actually true. And if you threaten violence when losing an argument, you're an idiot. And that is something also that as you go farther to like the fringe right, then yes, the people that tend to be on the far right, like as you go farther to the right, you're more likely to probably say to actually threaten violence when losing an argument. So yeah, that one you're actually, what are we at, 2 for 14 right now? Claiming that it is acceptable to abuse Jews or Muslims as Judaism and Islam are not races. Again, it's worded in such a left-wing way that it's hard to understand. So is it okay to abuse Jews or Muslims? No. I don't think it's good to abuse Jews or Muslims. I don't think it's good to abuse anyone. I don't think it's good to abuse any, like, in terms of initiating abuse, like, again, assuming it's not some kind of like response to other abuse. If you're talking about like abusing someone, no, abuse is bad, period. initiating any kind of aggression, like abusing someone, is a bad thing. So claiming that it is acceptable to abuse Jews or Muslims as Jews or Islam are not racist. The only time I ever hear people say, like, it's okay to say this, it's okay to criticize because they're not racist, is kind of like when you say, like, Islam is bad. When you say Islam is bad, you're criticizing it. You're saying you're giving your reasons why Islam is a bad ideology. And then the left will respond with, you're being racist. And it's like, Islam's not a race. So I'm assuming that's what they mean. That it is acceptable to basically criticize. I mean, I assume they're equating criticism with abuse here. Which, again, criticism is not abuse. You idiots. Again, honestly, being critical of Judaism is something that is not specifically Israel, but I'm talking about Judaism as an ideology. It tends to be something more restricting to both the far right and far left. So generally, you will find more anti-Semitism on the far right and far left. I mean, criticism of Israel, again, I have no position on the Israel thing because that's a very complicated issue that I've yet to dive into, and one of these days I will, but when I have time. So I'm guessing that's essentially saying that you're allowed to, or criticizing a religion isn't racist because a religion isn't a race. I think that's what they're trying to say there in a worded way. And again, that's not an extreme right-wing position. So again, maybe half a point there. I don't know. Have tattoos with covert extreme right-wing iconography. There you go. If you have it, the Black Sun or whatever it's called, on your chest, then sure, that is a sign. If you have a swastika tattooed on your wrist or on your arm, yeah, that is a sign of that is a warning sign that you're an extreme right-winger. So yeah, that's something that it is pretty much limited to the extreme right-wing to put extreme right-wing symbols on as tattoos. But then again, it all comes down to your definition of extreme right-wing iconography, because then they're like, oh my god, Kyrgyzstan flag. It's like, no. So that one I'll give a point there. Sure, that's accurate. Become increasingly angry at perceived injustices or threats to so-called national identity. This is something that I would say is probably used to be more common among the extreme right wing, just in the past, like compared to 10 years. 10 years ago, it was probably more common on the extreme right wing. But now, for the most part, talking about national identity is basically just being a nationalist, and pretty much, again, like, there are even left-wingers that are nationalists now. So being nationalist isn't even a right-wing position. It tends to be more right-wing, but of course, when as soon as the extreme left-wingers implement a communist society, they also become extreme nationalists. So really, this one just seems to be a critique of nationalism, and nationalism is not extreme right-wing. Extreme nationalism is extreme right-wing. But nationalism itself is not extreme right-wing. So, no, I disagree that this is a sign. What are we at here? 3 out of 17? 3.5 out of 17? I don't know. Involve colleagues in closed social media groups. Oh my god, involve colleagues in closed social media groups. I'm part of all kinds of closed social media groups. And to say, like, no, this is that is incredibly stupid. Like, that is something that isn't even political. Like, how many people are part of Facebook groups? Like, everyone. Most people are, pretty much everyone that uses Facebook is part of some closed social media group. You idiots. Actively seek out impressionable individuals to indoctrinate or recruit. I mean, yes and no, because it's the wording there. So, actively seek out impressionable individuals to indoctrinate or recruit. So, recruiting people on college campuses, that's something that every ideological group does. It's the wording again, like impressionable individuals to indoctrinate or recruit. So I would argue if your ideology is wrong, then yes, you are indoctrinating them. Well, they even said or recruit. So to actively seek out impressionable individuals to recruit. I mean, again, everyone does. Not even ideological people do this. This isn't even a politics thing. It's like, does that mean I'm just thinking of like the local chess club at school, like someone likes chess club, or someone likes playing chess, let's invite them to our group. Is that actively seeking out impressionable individuals to recruit to your chess club? So no, that's moronic. Again, these are all things that it's like the extreme right wing does this, but so does everyone else, or so do most people. It's not limited to them. Have extreme right wing group. That's like it's a bit I can't even think of the word right now. It's a bit redundant, isn't it? To say have extreme right-wing groups, stickers, or badges, or on clothing and personal items. So again, it all comes down to your definition of extreme right-wing group stickers. Like, what defines an extreme right-wing group? And honestly, it's like, it's correct. Just like the tattoo thing. Like, it's correct depending on what you define as the iconography. But then again, based on how they define the other 18 different things, for all we know, it's kind of like saying, like putting an American flag sticker on your car or something, like a bumper sticker on your car. Is that extreme right-wing group stickers? It all comes down to how you define the symbol. So it's like yes, but no. Yes, depending on how you define iconography and stickers or that. So, if you're concerned about the behavior of any member of the Army, you should report your concerns through the COFC and to the Army Warning Advisory and Reporting Point. WARP. It's not a good name. But yeah, so what are we going to give this? This could be out of 20, and we're going to give it, what, a 4 maybe? Like, and that's again, if we agree on the definition of extreme right-wing iconography, which we don't. So yeah, basically this is the problem. This right here shows the problem. The fact that they're willing to basically take all of these things that are not extreme right-wing at all and say this is a sign of extreme right-wing behavior. And of course, then it becomes your own kind of, it ends up becoming a bias, because once you start looking for something, when you're actively looking for a certain point, you'll start to see it everywhere. That's the thing. When you look at, when you're actively looking for signs of extreme right-wing behavior, you can say someone calls himself a patriot, and it's like, well, that is a sign of extreme right-wing behavior. It's also a sign of normal behavior and of any kind of right-wing behavior. But when you start looking like that, when you start looking for connections, that's when you end up creating stuff like this. So I guess all we can really say is that the person who wrote this was obviously had a certain political bias to that part, and did not take the time to differentiate between extreme right wing and regular right wing, or even centrists or anything like that. So yeah, this is a I don't even know if you can call to get rid of this, like if there's a way to petition against something like this, because this is just nonsense. Like, it's stuff that should not have any place in government or military or anywhere, really, honestly. It's just a flawed paper. What do we give them, a 4 out of 20? If we're being charitable on their definition of iconography, it gives them a 4 out of 20? So, or no, wait, hold on. Yeah, it is 20, okay. I almost thought I got my math wrong for a second. Yeah, let me know what you think about this video in the comments section. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more. Sorry it was a bit long. I admit that. I am trying to do that more. I know I'm kind of defeating my own point as I'm continuing to talk about this, but I am trying to cut down the length of my videos and try not to tangent so much, but no promises. And thanks for watching.